Welcome back to Be in Demand. I'm your host, Laurie-Ann Murabito. And if you are in corporate, a coach, a consultant, looking for that next client, that next big promotion, that next big opportunity, you're in the right place because this podcast is all about how to show up, get visible, be seen, and be heard. Today is a special bonus episode with a special guest, Dr. Michael Gershowitz. And we are going to be talking about speaking and having the right words when it matters the most. Michael, thank you so much for coming on to the Be in Demand podcast. And when I was perusing your website, so first off, I got two sisters in my family who are very musically inclined. It's like they got all the music DNA. And you've got this guitar passion, music passion. And one of the things that I find so interesting about music is it's not just the notes. It's the pauses in between the notes that make music so beautiful. And I think it's so interesting what you and I both do, because pausing is so important with communication. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like music and communication.
Um, well, I couldn't agree more to that. Like it's a spot on observation. And it actually mirrors my path in music. Like when I was a teenager, that learning the guitar was all about like learning how to play notes and scales and chords and especially learn to play them fast. Like uh, that 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 uh, that's something that I hear basically from every single guitarist, if not every musician out there. They're trying to like crunch it. But the older you get, the more songs you play, the more you play with others, together with others. And especially the more you play in front of audiences, you realize that it's actually much more the notes that you don't play that
Mm.
make a melody interesting.
Oh,
Like
say more
that
on that.
like that it's like that it's the tension that is created through space, through anticipation, through like where is this line leading, or through like landing on something and letting this note sit there for a full bar or even two or three, and like
Mm.
really let this affect this emotional resonance, then hit home and like make a point before you continue to like go off another ramp on another scale. Like it's the deliberate use of what is the note that needs to be right there, rather than what are all the notes that I could throw at the audience. What is the note that absolutely has to be there to give this song, this tune, this melody character?
Yeah. You just brought up something interesting about playing together. And when somebody is on stage, I mean, there's an art to working together. When I worked at Johnson and Johnson, like there's teams of people that are presenting together, and I would share with them like there's a way to look like you're all working together versus individuals that are here's my line, here's my line. There's something very beautiful. And I think with, again, like when you're speaking and some of the other speakers or some of the previous speakers, to be able to make it look like everybody is working together. I've never thought about that until just now, until you just brought it up.
Uh, One of my favorite quotes actually is from famous guitarist Pat Metheny. Not sure whether you know him. He's
Yeah.
for the jazz guitarist. He's rather famous. He's played with David Bowie once, and so he's rather well known for a jazz guitarist. And he once said that the best musicians aren't the best players; they're the best listeners. And I find this to be true not only in music but in all of communication. Like if you know how to listen well to what your partner just said, what the speaker that was on stage before you said, what the how the audience reacts to your to what you're saying right now, if you know how to pay attention to this, your speech is just gonna be so much more valuable and resonate so much stronger.
True, true. So let's just like back up a little bit. We're talking about your music, passion. But how did you get into communication coaching?
That was actually, I'd say, a pretty unusual path. Like I'm a computer scientist original. Like
Okay,
but
I'm not
but
surprised.
yeah, of all, yeah, you are not, but most people are when they mean when they hear that for the first time, because like computer scientists are usually not the kind of people you think about when you think of great communicators, are you? Like it's mostly the kind of people who run away screaming when someone talks to them. And that showed in the presentations that I was part of, like when I was still in that field, like doing research at Fraunhofer, one of the big research institutes here in Germany. Uh, and so it was actually pure frustration that finally led me to where I am today. Like frustration with all the great ideas that I've seen being thrown into a trash bin because no one cared for the right words. Like no one cared for finding better words to communicate the idea. Like people just trusted that good idea would find their way on their own. Like, and they just, well, did what everyone else did. They threw those boring, painful PowerPoints on the wall. I've been to conferences where 100 experts sat in the auditorium listening to a brilliant idea and no one understood a word. And I just thought that that's just not the way it should be. Like if that's a genuinely great idea, and if I believe in that, I need to help that idea survive that room, survive that presentation. I need to do the work for the audience so that they don't have to work so hard to understand what I'm getting at. I need to make it crystal clear what's the point of all this so that they don't have to dig for it. I need to give them a way to easily speak about this to their colleagues back in their company, rather than them trusting that they would do the hard work of finding that sentence. Like, yeah, and well, basically, I just tried to do it better, and people seem to like it. And at some point, they asked me, "So, what's the secret sauce? What do we do differently?" I started to write a blog, and that's how the first customer found me.
That's so interesting. As a woman with a degree in exercise physiology, I came from healthcare
Right.
and ended up speaking about leadership and writing books. And now, like I help people, like coaches and consultants, like write speeches, signature speeches
Yeah.
to as their best work. So I just feel like you and we just followed the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that's exactly what you have to do. I find it interesting how you set up, like your computer science, you were trying to find a different way to communicate with people because most people are just like, well, don't take the time. And we were talking about listening earlier. They don't take the time to listen better, to understand, and also be self-reflective. Like, why didn't that land? What could I have said better? And that's obviously something that you did and must be teaching your clients.
Yeah, I mean that's a phenomenon that's like that has me scratching my head since forever. Like, these are most of the people who like stand in front of those boring PowerPoints. They are really smart people. Like, they are critical thinkers. They know how to crack a problem. They know how to ask the hard questions. Uh, and they know how to doubt themselves, like in the field that they are working in. But the moment they present to someone or communicate
Mhm.
to someone about their ideas, they somehow switch modes into like, they've worked so hard in finding
Yes.
those ideas and in cracking those problems that they now have to get across how right they are. That
Mm.
this, and they're trying to be right. And that is the source, I think, for many of the problems we see in those presentations. That like they talk too much because they want to really prove their point. They stay vague in a way because they like try to protect themselves from attacks. Uh, but they also like to uh, like like to hammer their point home and not really, they lose, in a way they lose sight of getting it right. By
So,
trying so hard to be right, they lose sight of getting it right.
so do you think that's people's egos getting in the way of good communication?
Um, it, we might call it ego. Perhaps it's just like how it looks from the outside. It's perhaps
Making sure
just
that they look good.
yeah, a fear or something that like they need to they feel they need to impress or perform when standing in front of
Mm.
people. They need to prove themselves or need to prove that they are really on top of things, that they are really the experts they've been introduced as. And so, yeah, and that leads them to focus more on themselves rather than like the idea or even more important on the audience. So what the audience needs in that moment to
Right.
understand the idea and take it out of that room.
Right. So how do you get the clients that you work with to stop focusing on themselves, whether we call it ego or I want to make sure I look good, I'm afraid of looking bad, of making a mistake? How do you change it so that they stop focusing on themselves and they start focusing on who's in front of them, whether that's a big audience or even just a small boardroom?
I find the most effective question to achieve that is to make them think of what I like to call the pass along phrase. Because almost no one does that. Like everyone thinks about the key message, like what's my key message?
Mhm.
But that is inherently a selfish question. That is something that makes me think of, so what's important here for me, and what is the core of what I find fascinating, what I'm passionate about. Uh, and that is then something like, I don't know, we want to be the efficiency leader in the logistics industry, so, something like that.
Mhm.
That is a core message, a key message. But that is not something that anyone could say to someone who wasn't there at the presentation and ask someone in your audience, so what was the talk about? Uh, so but that is the crucial point. Like, what are they going to pass along in that moment? So they are certainly not going to say an abstract thing like, yeah, it was about being the efficiency leader in the logistics industry. They will say something like, yeah, our goal will be to that like it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, like FedEx's famous
FedEx.
strategy, which is the same thing as the core message, just in a way that it makes sense for the audience, that they can do something with it, understand it, embrace it, and pass it along. Like, and once you understand that, you start to wonder, okay, so now what needs to happen so that
Mhm.
they actually can do that, that they actually understand it and can take that to the next person.
Yeah.
And once you start looking at your talk this way, you're not so much concerned anymore with throwing everything at your audience, hoping that like something, if not the most important thing, your point sticks. But instead, you build your talk backwards from that moment that they are passing it along. So where are they starting from? Where do they need to arrive? And so how can I take them step by step on that path to that pass along
100%,
phrase?
100%. Most people who write speeches are throwing everything, like, and randomly in places during the speech when it's like it's got no business being there. And
Exactly.
your pass along phrase is what I call like a catchphrase, something that is so repeatable that by what I tell my clients is that by the end of the speech, your audience should be mouthing that phrase because you've said it again and again and again. And, like one of mine is speaking's the fastest way to grow your business.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's easy, it sings, and that's, like
And
that.
here's the thing. Here's the thing that many people still get wrong about this.
Mhm.
They think about like what people should pass along. Like, what is this like as if this was like a wish list where we could just like wish our audience that they pass it along. I think the crucial flip is here is to replace should with would. Like, what would they actually pass along? And
Mm,
that brings empathy and, yeah, basically listening back into the game. Like how can we frame it in a way that they actually would want to pass it along? Like, it makes them look good, it helps them in a way, it's easy for them. Like it's not something that we can command them or that they should do, but we wonder what needs to happen so they actually would want to pass it along or would want to use that catchphrase to tell someone about your talk.
Yeah, I love that. Can we change subjects to one of my
Absolutely.
favorite topics, which is storytelling?
Mm.
And I find storytelling so fascinating. And I mean, your audience sees themselves in the story that you're giving. And I know that this is something that you highlight a lot with the people that you work with. Where do you find that when they come to you, are they telling stories at all?
Some do, some do not. Some are even skeptical, if
What do
not
you mean
mad,
they're skeptical?
if
There's
if
so
not
much
mad
information
at.
about storytelling out there.
Yeah, because the thing is that there's there's a lot of good advice on storytelling out there, but there's also a lot of misleading advice out there, and there's also a lot of romanticizing uh, advice out there, like that makes it appear like it would be about like just like sharing that vulnerable anecdote of yours that to and that like is about like the cute part of storytelling, the admirable, like, yeah, he was so vulnerable on stage. Like it was such an emotional story when like it's still like a tough business decision. Not that there's not a place for that, but uh, I have quite a number of clients who are skeptical about this over dramatizing. And I think they have a point because I see that confusion quite a few times that like people think about emotion storytelling as the thing that puts the emotion in the talk, in the topic, uh, when it's actually the opposite. Like it's exactly the other way around. Like when there's meat and substance and something that actually matters to your audience,
Mhm.
then the job of the story is to expose that, to surface that, not to inject it. Like it's exactly the other way around. If it matters, then there's drama, and then there will be a great way to turn it into a story. But but if that is missing, you can tell the most beautiful story in the world. It's not going to spice it up in the way that you'd like. Yeah, it might be beautiful, it might be emotional, but it's not going to lead to the change you're seeking.
Mm. And how do you encourage people to practice their storytelling? Because I'm just thinking it's great to write out your stories, but you know, to be able to do the reps to try out the story before you actually need the story, how do you encourage your clients to practice? And where do they practice?
Uh, I think one great way to do that is like the notebook, like to just like pay attention to the things that you notice yourself and like to just collect those things and then observe yourself, like be a bit better listener to yourself when you
Mhm.
explain something to someone and that person responds with a blank stare. Like that's the moment
That
when
one
you
didn't work.
reach for the better explanation, like for the
Yeah.
metaphor, for the anecdote. It's like when you like imagine when so like those moments. And another thing that I try to do is that I like try to lower the burden, that it's not so much about like becoming the Steven Spielberg on stage, like that you don't necessarily have to narrate a full-blown story in order to become a great storyteller. Some of the best storytellers that we have are actually more like sparking stories than playing out narrating them. Like they give you that little detail that reminds you of that situation that you've been there, that you've been yourself in, like, and that little detail helps you like craft your own story, your own version of the story. And when that happens, it will always be more powerful than any story that you can tell as as a speaker on stage in a full-blown version? Like how do you trigger, how do you spark that own version in the audience? And that's something that's often much more tangible for my clients than like learning how to put someone in the scene and like re-narrate and relive the moment.
Yeah, I think storytelling is quite the art. It's
Yeah.
something that, like, I've been working on and I'm constantly working on, and it's really about dropping people in the middle of the story. But when I was asking you about, like, how do you encourage, like, your clients to practice? I mean, I just tell people, like, practice with your friends,
Yeah.
practice with your family,
That's great.
so that
That's
when
great.
you're on stage, it's like you have told this story before and you've maybe made some iterations, but you've gotten better because it's not the first time you've told the story, but also there's just an art to telling stories. Even just playing with your voice. I studied voice all last year. So
Mhm.
that's something that I've been really embodying, is how you play with your voice.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
something that you work with your, encourage people to play with their voice?
Um, well,
'Cause
it's not what I've
it makes the speech interesting to listen. It makes anybody interesting to listen to.
a- it absolutely does. Like the way I would work on that, like I'm not a voice coach or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, that like I try to find like where's the where's the itch for yourself? Like where's the passion for yourself? What is the version of the story that you want to tell from the deepest deepest point in your heart, like wholeheartedly stand behind. And once you find those words, that will almost happen automatically, not to the fullest. Like the first time you try it, it will still be like, yeah, a little bit tuned down, muted. But like then repeat it, like what you mentioned before, like do the reps, like tell that story twice, 3 times, 4 times. And then two things happen. First of all, you notice how it gets shorter. It gets more and quicker to the point because you notice which details actually do matter to lead that to the climax. But also it helps you to tell it with more passion and let that show and shine through by modulating
Yeah.
your voice, slowing down, using pauses to like let something sink in or let the audience do the comparison with their own experiences. uh, that's only possible if you do the reps. Like
Yeah. So one of the things I find fascinating with working with corporate and, like, you're working with leaders, is that, like, they don't have, like, a canned speech, and chances are they're speaking at presentations either weekly, a couple of times a week, or sometimes, like, and at big events. What do you think is the difference, like, with preparation for those last minute versus high stakes events?
um I would so let's say what's similar first, like is
Okay.
that it's never about like the certainty of getting every word exactly right, but
Mhm.
knowing the direction, knowing like where are we headed with this, like what's the point. uh, and like if it's like that huge lead up time where you have time to rehearse it like 100 times, or like the Ken speeches that you repeat like 100 times a year and that keeps getting better and better. um like unlike those, um when you have to do it the first time, it's still like driven by like that focal point, like what's the point. And that is something that will really change the game. Like if you know, so instead of like obsessing over your slides or your like exact script, if you instead like once again start with listening to, so what does that moment require from me? What does it need from me?
Mm.
And then trusting yourself that you've got the experience and the details present, like, because if you care for the work that you do, if you're an expert at what you do, the good reasons and all the details and the facts and the data will likely not be the problem. Like when it all falls together is when you figure out like the real reason, like what's the thing that made everyone show up here? What are they expecting from me? And like when you know where it all leads to, you'll likely have the facts
Yeah.
lined up. Like, and
Mm.
that's much more important. And then there's no point in worrying like to about completeness, but because like no one knows what you were gonna tell them. Like you'll likely have enough of the facts and the details available that once you're clear where it all leads to,
Mhm.
you can line enough of them up to make a convincing case.
And I think that when you are concerned about your delivery and the message, the more that you do it, that you're focusing on, like, what is the message that I want to make sure that I deliver, that people walk away with at this meeting, at this conference. I think the more that you do it, the quicker and the easier it gets to write those speeches. I mean, you like think about, I don't know about you, but I grew up in going to the Catholic Church, and those priests had to write a speech every single week. And
Hmm.
some of them were longer than others.
Hmm.
So I think it is about doing a lot of reps also, because I know, like for myself, if I had to give a new keynote tomorrow, I could put that together quickly. But years ago, it took me a long time.
Yeah. And we're back at one question that you asked earlier, because so why? So I don't think that it's just the experience. I think another thing that happened in between was that back then, back in the days, you were concerned with yourself. Like, how do you
Mhm.
come across? Like, will I be good enough here? Will the joke that I tell that I've planned for the opening land? Will it really surprise them? While today you couldn't care less anymore. Like you care for the audience. Like, why did they show up? What do they need from me? What does the moment require? And like in a way, you stepped off that hero's pedestal, and and like turn the spotlight around to give it to the audience. And that is something that I see time and time again. Once people do that, it feels like a huge weight is lifted off their shoulders, because that
Mhm.
hero's pedestal, that where you have to prove that you're actually worth standing up there, that's a notoriously difficult place to be in. Like it puts that burden on you. But once you see that, that's not even my job, because everyone in the audience already got a hero, and it's themselves. They don't need you as their new hero. Like they need you to support them to become an even better hero of their own lives. Once you switch that around, like you see that many of the things that you used to worry 5 years ago aren't that important at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so true, so true. So what do you think the difference is between, especially when leaders are up there speaking, to the difference between convincing, persuasion, and inspiration?
Uh, that's an interesting question, because like I see that there's so much confusion in that space, like, and and also a lot of misleading advice, especially if we pick like persuasion here. Like it's often treated as the gold standard of
Mm.
communication. Like that's the goal, like to persuade people to do to do like what you recommend doing. Um, but like whenever you think when you think of an arbitrary any situation where you've been on the receiving end, like, and you sniff that someone was trying to persuade or using a persuasion technique to get you to do something, the defenses immediately go up, right? And you become skeptical, like, and
you pull away.
exactly. And the thing is, the harder you persuade, the more I back away, like, and so if you think about what persuasion actually does, I think that that's no wonder. Like, the point of persuasion is to get someone to do something they originally didn't want to do. Because if they wanted, so why would I need to persuade them, right? So, and like what you called inspiration, I prefer to call that resonance, is what works a little differently. It asks a different question. So in what I want you to do, like what I ask you to do, is there an aspect that speaks to what you want to? Like, is there some common ground? Is there perhaps a way to think about what I'm asking you as helping you get what you want, perhaps even in a better way, in a more efficient way, a cheaper way, whatever it is. Like, and once I figure that out and I speak to that, so I'm suddenly on your side. I'm not trying to get you to do something that you didn't want to do. I'm actually helping you get what you wanted in the first place. And that's always, so if I figure that point out, it's always going to be so much easier. And that's why we follow those people that inspire me in that sense so much more willingly and are so much more open to listening to them compared to when we see that someone's trying to persuade us.
Yes, inspiration to me is something that I, as an audience member, aspire to. Like, that's what I want. I'm trying, like, help me get from A to B, versus convincing is like, what's wrong with what I am doing? Like, why would you be convincing me that this way is better? And persuasion seems to be a little like a combination of both. Depending on how well the persuasion is done, might lead to inspiration, but could end up leading to that feeling of convincing and pull. And I would just pull away, or your audience will just pull away. This is just really interesting. So what are some, I love to always ask this question about speaking tips. Like, what is the most interesting speaking tip that you give your clients? And I'm using the word interesting, but it could just be powerful, impactful, one that surprises them. And I'll share one with you.
Yeah, it's actually about storytelling, I think. Something that surprises some of them. So I think if you're in the strictest sense of the word, there's actually only one thing that you need to understand about storytelling. And that's to ask the question, or to embrace the question that your audience has, and that makes a story powerful. And that's what happens next. Like, it really doesn't matter if your story is built around the hero's journey or if you're walking through a plain old spreadsheet. If your audience is dying to know what you're going to say next, you've got a compelling story. And so the version that you can use for your talk is to build your talk around your audience's curiosity by always asking, so what is your audience dying to know next? So, and if you use that as your guiding principle to structure your talk, you've really built something. Your idea is really something that speaks to what matters to your audience, that solves an urgent need that they have. There's no way that that's not going to end up in a compelling story, in a compelling presentation. Like, yeah. And so the only thing that you need to have is that great idea that actually speaks to something, and then listening to your audience putting yourself in your audience's shoes and asking, so what are they dying to know next?
Yeah. It's almost like really good copywriting. Like to compel somebody to read that first line is got to be so good so that they read the next line and the next line. And that to me
Yes.
is what speaking is. Speaking
Yeah.
is verbal copy, it's verbal art
Hmm.
to get people to continue to
Yeah.
listen. I love this. Thank you so much for coming on here and having this conversation. What else would you like to leave the audience with?
So the one thing that I never get tired of repeating, and I've even said it during our conversation, is that the world will be a better place if we stop caring so much about being right and cared more about getting things right. Like if we're not obsessed with how we see things and tried more to understand. So what is a common perspective here? What can we achieve together? Getting it right together. That's something that makes your talks better, but that will hopefully always also make you a better human being and society as a whole a little bit better.
Yeah, I like that. Instead of me versus you, it's we're all in this together.
Yeah.
I love that. And Michael, don't you have something for the audience? I know that we talked about it earlier.
Uh, Absolutely. So I've written a little book that's titled "The Best Talk of Your Life," the one people can't stop talking about. Um, it has like perhaps surprisingly few tips that I think have an outsized effect on giving a talk that actually leads to action, that actually touches people. That's more than just a wow effect, because I think wow opens the mind, but you need a profound aha moment to actually change people's minds. That helps you lead your audience to that aha moment. Yeah, you can download it at michaelgerharz.com/be in demand.
And I'll make sure that that link is down below, especially if you're driving or you're at the gym listening to this. So again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. And until next week, everybody, I want you to be in demand.